podcast. So today is about horseshoe theory. Thank you all for joining me. I know it was kind of a rough start, but I'm glad you all hung in there. So yeah, I figured for today's topic, we would talk about horseshoe theory. I know it's like a popular meme, but a lot of people actually believe in it as well. So to start off the panel, do you I guess well, first off, just give an intro of yourself, um and then tell me where you stand on horse theory, I guess. Horseshoe theory. Biggs, did you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. So my name is Biggs. I stream on Twitch at Biggs8500, and I'm also on Twitter and YouTube at Biggs8500. I'm a centrist libertarian, a practical libertarian. I believe in um, basically individual rights above all, but I do believe that there are some practical situations we can take, and I think that we should strive for best situations and best outcomes for individuals overall. My take on the horseshoe theory is that it is true and it is real. I feel like that when you get down to it, things like authoritarianism and libertarianism can end up being very situational convergence, and I think that we'll find that through this conversation. I think that people definitely have different ideas of how this could be policy oriented, but I think that it's going to be an interesting conversation, and I'm here for that, and I'm here for positive outcomes and positive solutions. So hopefully we can have a great conversation on that topic, and I'm looking forward to what we can come up with here.
Hell yeah. Dylan, you want to go next?
Sure, why not? I'm Dylan. I'm radically far to the left, concerningly so. I'm a council communist. And so basically, my position on horseshoe theory is that the philosophical aspect of horseshoe theory is not true whatsoever. In fact, it is quite the opposite. However, practically speaking, and in
Oh,
terms of
thank you,
outcomes, if
Haas,
wanna
for
talk about,
following. I appreciate it. Thank you so
applications to
much.
the real world, I think horseshoe
Haas
theory is a very
00312,
real
thank
thing
you.
in that regard. But in terms of just raw ideas, no, I don't think it's valid.
All right. Ethan.
Hi, I'm Ethan. I'm at Ethan Plays Live on YouTube and Twitch and Twitter and all the different places. And I studied political science at college. Actually, Jean-Pierre Frey's book on horseshoe theory came out while I was in college. I consider myself a progressive liberal, and horseshoe theory is unequivocally not true.
Cool.
Okay. I'm Jazz Grackle, JAZZGRACKLE, on Twitch, on Twitter, on YouTube. I consider myself a sort of
Thank you for hanging
liberal,
out. I appreciate it.
Neoliberal type. Horseshoe theory, I think theoretically no. Like if you go to the far right versus the far left, the goals are entirely different. I do think there are some convergences. For example, I think that social isolationism kind of comes up a lot. For example, like if you have such an extreme idea, you're only going to be part of like one small social club. So I see these different convergences of things in practice, but as theories,
I feel like the sound is a little off right now.
Hey.
Somebody's coming in hot.
Kobe.
Hello. Yeah. I won't reiterate what, because I agree with what most has been said. I obviously, monarchism is not, monarchism is far to the right, I guess you could say, and anarcho-primitivism is far to the left, and these are not similar ideas at all. These are like radically different. But I would agree that, I think that, as I said, there's a practical reality of it. I personally have a sort of evolved theory of it, which I call universal dogmatic behavior. I think if you have a single all-encompassing worldview that kind of gives you all the answers, it tells you what we need to do from interpersonal life to political life, et cetera, whether it's a religious worldview, historical materialism, Marxist-Leninism, hyper rabid, what's it called, nationalism. It seems like you just kind of get attracted to certain kinds of behaviors, right? Limiting wrong, being very sensitive to wrong think, limiting what information is available, authoritarianism, anti-democratic behaviors. It seems like that's kind of like what maybe a more academic. It's silly to call it academic, but a little bit more theory brained take on it. So yeah. I don't know if I introduced myself. I'm Kobe. I don't know if I said that.
Awesome.
Hello, I'm Pastel Dallas or Abigail. Pastel Dallas on like everything, so Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter. Um, I would generally call myself a neoliberal, liberal, progressive, civil libertarian. Um, those are like the best labels that I ascribe to myself. I think labels are like really stupid and don't actually muddy the water a lot in political conversations. I obviously do not believe in horseshoe theory. However, I have very funny examples of people on both the far left and far right doing and saying the exact same things. So for the memes, I'm just going to present this as if it is true because it's really, really, really funny.
So,
Oh yeah, what was that?
yeah, I just wanted to point out, like, I noticed, like, as like a liberal, if I see a page, it's like, hey, like, let's make fun of liberals. I have no idea whether it's from the left or the right until I
True.
like really dig into the accounts and find out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's oh man. So like very recently, I've been coming back onto Twitch and streaming a lot more, and like I'm deep in pinky Twitter right now, and I'm telling you, I cannot tell these people apart from like Nazis and pinkies. It's actually impossible. Without like looking at their bio because they usually will say it there. But
Right.
yeah. So obviously, I'm glad no one here like actually believes horseshoe theory is real. I was worried that maybe we'd get someone, but we don't. But yeah, I'm gonna be presenting it as if it is real with examples because it's really funny.
Okay. And I am the host, Stardust. My political affiliations are irrelevant in this conversation. I just play devil's advocate. I will say that there's also similarly on the left and on the right, this whole don't trust the media. It's there to brainwash you. Don't trust any media because it's gonna, it's there to brainwash the masses. And it like super far right and super far left will also even like reject any reputable sources sometimes that you present to them. So yeah.
Well, and I think what we're talking about is really extremism, right? Because extremism looks the same whether it's religious extremism, political extremism. Any kind of extremism fundamentally is going to say we all must believe the same thing, and if you don't, you can't be in the club. And communism, absent from Leninism, I'm talking about communism, I'm talking about Marxism. Communism doesn't have something where it says the infidels must be eradicated. Fascism does, totalitarianism does.
Yeah.
And that's a fundamental difference. Communism is a theory. It's a political theory. Stuff like fascism is a political theory. Socialism isn't really a theory. It's a socioeconomic state of a democratic government. We're talking about theories. We're not talking about practicalities.
Well, I guess if you're like, I guess if you want to, and I agree with you, but I think like it's different for me to think about Marxism in like a normative sense and Marxism in a descriptive sense, because you can take like Marxian analysis, and even that's still used in like, a lot of liberal academia to understand maybe how like labor force works with like the ownership class and all that stuff. You can do that, but I do think that once you start getting into like this is how things should be, then there are some kind of deductive actions that must be taken, and I think that's where we get into problems, at least somewhat.
Yeah. For reference, Marxism, moreover, when people use the term Marxism, at least academically, it's to be referred to as the lens of analysis of Marxist analysis. Orthodox Marxism would be the political ideology.
I try to use that Marxian rather than Marxist to differentiate the two, but I don't know how. I've seen that in a few books, but I don't know how common that is.
Well, and the problem is when you get that deep into academia, a lot of times you're talking past, when you're trying to communicate to somebody that's not into, well, what's the difference between totalitarianism and authoritarianism? Because those things sound very the same. If you're going to also try to differentiate between Marxism and Marxian, you've kind of lost the battle at that point. So I like to talk about theories that people understand and have heard of with language that they've understood and heard of to kind of give a base generalization and stay out of the weeds. Because I think, especially when you're talking about political theory, when you get too far into the weeds, that's when people come up with shit like the horseshoe theory.
So, Stardust, it's really funny how you mentioned that the far left and far right both hate the media, because I literally have a meme of someone, and I'll post it in our little chat here, and in general chat in your server.
Okay.
And you can show this on stream if you want, of this person tweeting literally that, how they think the Holocaust might not have be as bad as it was because of the Western media lying about it, and how they've lied about other Holocausts or other genocides.
Oh my gosh. What is it that there is like Holocaust denialism on both sides? It's so wild to me.
Well, I think what's interesting is that you get into like conspiracy theories, and I think the answer for
Mhm.
conspiracy theories is that like people want like an easy enemy and like an easy answer. So it's very easy to go, who's the answer? The Jews. Who's the answer? What's
Yeah.
wrong with the world? The capitalists, whatever it might be. And I think it's just very easy for people to digest on either side of those things.
Well, and it hooks back into extremism because you've got to be, if you are an extremist, you only want to be around other extremists because everybody else is immoral or, whatever label you're
whatever
putting
you
on
want to say, yeah.
Sure. Same reason why Sharia law is very you can't be outside of Sharia law because it's an extremist ideology. So I think maybe it's tied to that somehow. That somehow people on the left believe these things, but obviously it happened and billions of people died.
Yeah.
I have a question. Let me take it.
Hey.
I thought it was kind of interesting. A point that that was brought up earlier that I agree with, which is like, seems like the further away, the more extreme you get to a political ideology, the less they trust the elites.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna hop on for the walk-on panel. I've got. I might hop on politically provoked tonight.
I was just listening.
But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Stuff from a left-wing
But thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. I appreciate you hanging out.
And they're like, well, that's because big corporations don't like life, and so they're giving us a bad vaccine. You kind of get there. You kind of get there either way. But this would be my
Thank
question.
you, Looter. Let's go. Let's go.
Theory. What I mean by that is it's not.
I'm already hammered, guys, so I apologize for anything that I say in the future because I am fucking 3 sheets to the wind and I have no filter.
Between Marxist-Leninism and between Maoism and between this, that, and the otherism, it seems to be trying to describe the actual. At the end of the political,
yes,
the end of that,
bigs equal hammered equals based for sure.
The ways that political organizations end up acting, right? The idea that you get, whether you have hardcore communist organizations or hardcore fascist organizations, they'll many times advocate for like political terrorism, et cetera, et cetera. I am not sure how much. I think it's true that it's not academically correct, but I think there's a little bit more of an interesting analysis there.
When you look at what Jean-Pierre Frey said. He actually said kind of what you said, like in the middle of the horseshoe.
They're getting way too much into the fucking weeds right now already.
The phrasing he used. And
way into the weeds. Way into the weeds.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, and those centrist elites are their own type of extremism. I think the whole thing is crap.
I'll try, Stickbull. I'll try.
You can add me, it's fine. So you've got
the topic is
want to keep everything the same.
Horseshoe theory and whether or not it's real or not, and what effect it has on politics in general.
Afraid of anything that would let them or allow them to lose their status as the elites of this society.
Barry is gone.
So I want to get Dylan.
Barry
I saw
is
him
actually out.
earlier, so,
My daughter went and stayed at her grandparents tonight, so she has Barry with her currently. So there'll be no Barry on the stream tonight.
Extremist in this call. Generally speaking,
Barry is on location at the moment. Okay, Looter. Barry is on location. He is literally trying to keep my daughter asleep and help her sleep at her grandparents. Okay, so any bullshit you have is fucking ridiculous. Okay.
Considering the original political compass was used to, like the right wingers were the monarchists and the left wingers were the capitalists. This is used to kind of, I think the left-right dichotomy is more referring to a hierarchical structure.
Yeah, you're not getting buried tonight. I'm sorry, you're not getting buried. I'm sorry, it's not happening. I'm sorry. It's not happening. I'm sorry. He's not. He is literally not in the fucking building.
Like essentially, they do preserve higher means, and I think it's important to acknowledge that when talking about horseshoe theory.
Well, I think that. So I have a bit of a contention with things like for say a country like that, like a tanky might stand, like China or something. I think the contention that they would make is that, well, yes, party officials and the leadership is at the top. Everyone else at least has some kind of equal say. That the workers are there, but there's a facility there that allows inequality to happen. I think that would be the tanky.
Right. But I think
vanguards are still the elites of the society. It's still a hierarchical structure. And moreover, the power dichotomy is shifted.
Try and be nice to Dylan. Try and be nice. Yeah. So the issue is when you get to the ends of what actually people want, whether they're fully socialist or fully fascist, they want the same things. They want to have complete control of what people do, and that's where horseshoe theory comes into play. Horseshoe theory is what when you get to the ends of each dichotomy, people inevitably want control. And that's where the actual epitome of this whole conversation is to be held, is who has control, whether it's the people, whether it's the government, or whether it's the elites, or whatever you want to ascribe to the people in control. That's where it comes down to. And I think that... Go ahead.
So I think Pastel is raising.
Oh,
her
sorry,
hand, so,
Pastel.
Yeah, so just to be serious for 1 second, I think horseshoe theory is only slightly valid whenever you consider like both far left and far right want to use populism or some populist policies to get things passed. And populist policies tend to be popular for all people. That's why it's called populism, right? And so that's why you'll see sometimes both sides saying the same exact things or roughly the same things because it's popular. And if they can convince people like, oh, hey, we want this popular policy, scooch over to my side more, we'll start seeing people slightly radicalized to that side, which is where you can see like whoever said like a boots on ground type ideology, where I kind of agree with that, where like not in the academic sense, but in just the layman, how people will try to convince other people of ideologies, they'll use populist policies to convince them of their like far extremist ideologies.
Yeah.
And I think that actually has a lot of merit to it.
Yeah, and but what the actual like legitimacy of whatever is in control of is, to me, the far left is they want the people to be in control, and the far right wants the elites to be in control, or whatever they deem to be the correct version of their ideologies, right? So whatever you come down to is whatever the ideology that you expose is what should be the correct course of action. And that's where I think horseshoe theory actually comes down to, because when you have the left that wants like the people rising up or whatever that they like their ideology is, and from the right it's like the top down issue, but it's still the same thing. And that's where it comes down to is who has control and where is that control coming from, and how do we relate to that control in the general aspect of the common people. And that's where it comes down to.
So my issue with this in practice, and like in theory, yes, I agree with you, but in practice, it seems like if you wanted to have something like anarchism, you would have to enforce it in some way. You know, people on the left don't seem to actually want the majority rule. Like, it's not a pure democracy. For example, like, you have a workplace that's like 75% like racist white people. Like, no, they do not want the racist white people to go through. And I think that's perfectly valid, but I still think at the end of the day, it's not about like, I think in both ends of the extreme, you're going to have the same kind of control. There's going to be the people who have the right opinion or the correct opinion that are going to be making the shots. And I think that's true of either the left or the right.
Oh, go ahead, Ethan.
Sorry.
No, you're good. And sorry about my mic. I was on the webcam mic earlier, so somebody fixed that for me.
Yeah, how's my audio doing, by the way? I should check that because I had that problem before too.
You're
okay.
good.
Yeah,
it's
somebody clear.
So here's the issue. So anarchism is not a political theory, because anarchism, my opinion, is the absence of political structure, right? So when we talk about hyper left, we're gonna stop somewhere around anarcho-communism, and we're gonna read Murray H. Rothbard books, and we're gonna be very happy about that. But the idea behind it would be something like, or maybe syndicalism. Maybe we're going to stop at syndicalism.
We're all Noam Chomsky, okay.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to stop at this place where there is no government control. So just before that is where you've got something like communism, where I'm agreeing with Biggs on a few points, but you're fundamentally ensuring that the government is being used as a tool. I think that's something that is very different between liberalism and conservatism, because conservatism sees government as the enemy. We want dual sovereignty. We don't want the federal government in our lives. We want local governments to be far stronger than state governments, that are far stronger than federal governments, that are far stronger than world governments, right? If we're talking about theories here. Where liberalism says, no, the government is a tool. The government is a way to ensure equality, whether that's economic equality or gender equality, any kind of equality. We use our government as a tool to ensure it, to make these regulations, make these laws, and to enforce these regulations and enforce these laws. And so that is one of the fundamental differences that you're not going to get from the extremist sides, right? Because you're not going to get you're going to get an enforced hyper ultra nationalism from fascism, and in communism you're going to say everybody's the same, everybody is equal, and everybody has equal rights. Fundamentally, the capitalism says everybody has access to resources, and socialism would say, well, everybody needs to start from the same place so that they can achieve those resources, so that they can grab them.
Dylan, did you want to go and respond to this? Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say before a vein in my forehead explodes. I feel the important distinctions here one has to make is with anarchism and anarcho-communism, right? Because these are all theoretical ideas that have never been attempted. You could say they've maybe been tried or pushed for.
Like you can't like Rojava or like Catalina, what
Catalonia.
Catalonia, yeah.
Yeah, Catalonia.
I would count maybe like the Zapatistas to an extent.
Okay.
But I think still in practice, like anarchism as a political philosophy can't really function in a world where there's other governing bodies around it, which is why it's a very impractical philosophy, generally speaking.
It's more of a way of thinking, is that right? That's what I've heard from anarchists. It's more a way of analysis and trying to reach towards something rather than like an end goal, even though the end goal is there.
The issue with that line of thinking, though, is the distinctions between all the factions of anarchists, right? Because they're all ideologically very different despite what they say. Like, if you think about like anarcho-syndicalists and communists versus ANCAPs. And
like honestly, how useful is political ideology if there's only 5 people who practice it?
Okay.
Well,
True. Actually true.
Agreed.
Well, I do want to hear. Was there anything else that you wanted to say, Dylan, or?
Well,
yeah, I feel like I feel like there's a bit of a mischaracterization of communism and socialism, especially going on here.
Okay.
well, we don't care
Can you
about
elaborate?
communism or socialism.
Well, I mean,
That really doesn't regard like horseshoe theory.
We only care about patriot ideologies here.
Wait, no, because the point we engaged on was communism is enforced something. It's not really, if you think about this definition of stateless, classless, moneyless society.
But
which
how
I
do
know
you get
everyone
there?
thinks is a
Okay, hold on.
theoretical.
You can't get there without actual government intervention. That doesn't exist without
Yes,
that.
So, but the thing is you can't get to any system without government intervention.
Exactly.
True.
Right.
So how can you espouse governmentless like currency-less like theoretic?
Right, so there's methods
Stateless.
and approaches to getting to these places, right? And that's ideologically where all the systems are very different. And I just feel like this mischaracterization of communists as totalitarian.
How do you get to socialism or communism without coercion or violence? Like how do you get to that point?
You can do it through coercion or reform.
Coercion, which is what is the definition of a coercion? That is.
So the thing is there's ways of getting to a socialist economy that are different.
When has that ever happened?
Okay, I gotta talk. Okay.
Wait,
Okay,
that's not really an argument.
Cut me off and everyone starts being stupid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of approaches one can take to socialism.
But which
right?
one is taken most often though, or historically has been taken most often?
Well, that's not really.
Yeah,
That's
What
not
is
really
your
relevant.
ideological best option?
Wait, guys.
Reformism.
Okay, yes, guys. Let's let him elaborate on what exactly he
don't
sees.
jump on me, please, for the love of God.
I love jumping on you, Dylan.
Love jumping. Let's go.
You're the best to jump on.
Hop on.
I love you.
I'm well aware of this. However, that being said, the thing is like for this type of policy to be enforced, it doesn't necessarily have to come from an authoritarian place, which is I feel like the issue with these horseshoe theory memes, because it's like, well, the far like this conflation of ultra nationalistic fascism to ultra, totalitarian communists forcing everyone to have equal rights is really ridiculous, considering a lot of socialists and a lot of communists by proxy who see socialism as a stepping stone to communism don't necessarily see this as like something that needs to be enforced by a government, rather transition through a series of policies which one can voluntarily consent to being part of. So for example, there are tax incentives with socialists, like democratic socialist politicians. You see this this happened in Venezuela. It wasn't very successful, but we're not here to talk about that right now. Moreover, and like if we were to contextualize this in America, right, and someone like Bernie Sanders were to come in and be, President Bernie Sanders, and that doesn't seem very likely. However, if someone like him were to be like, we're going to legislate tax cuts.
We're going to legislate socialism.
We're going to legislate, like he's going to put tax cuts in for or worker cooperatives, right? That's something that people can still voluntarily take part in when they establish what type of company they're part of, right? So this view that socialism in essence is totality is kind of unfounded.
I guess
I think-
the issue is that everything you're describing is liberal capitalism.
I think if we can
Wait,
completely
but if the economy transitions to a point in which the economy is socialized to an extent that people have the ability to,
we have to give the people the choice to be
so
socialist. So if you want to have people that want to institute co-ops, I'm 100% behind that. I think that people should be able to do whatever the fuck they want to do because that's what they want to do, not because somebody tells them to do it or not. And I think
But
I
you
completely
don't think
agree
that
with it. I think that that's
democratically
actually
elected
I agree with you, Dylan.
are
I think that
voluntary?
co-ops and things like that are beneficial if they can be done in a way that can show that co-ops and things like that can actually improve like worker rights and worker abilities. I think that's 100% justified.
Okay, middle person has not got. I think you've been raising your hand for a long time. I forget your name. I'm sorry, but I feel like plaid shirt. You've been waiting
I have like
a while.
an unbelievable amount of things to say.
I'm so sorry.
The fact that we're even talking about like, well, actually, you see, in 1947, the fascist tendency of North Italy said the fact this is okay. Horseshoe theory is a street smarts theory. It is not a book smarts theory. And I don't even disagree with anything that's been said. Everything I think has been astute analysis. But I don't think it is irrelevant to the idea of horseshoe theory in the slightest. Okay, horseshoe theory is about the ways that ideologies in a given material condition in a given society actually end up working. One thing I think that we are losing is that horseshoe theory is dependent on the idea of there being a center. Okay, you have to have a society and define what is the majority power holding ideology of
like Overton Windows stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I'm talking about establishment liberal and then establishment conservative. Okay, if you have these ideologies, you are obviously pretty close to the center. You don't want to see the overturning of democracy. You don't want to see a civil war, et cetera, et cetera. And the further away you get from this, the less concerned you are about our democratic liberties, the less concerned you are about things like going to war with certain parts of the country or whatever. Horseshoe theory is talking about these given ideologies, irregardless of the academic sense, in the context of them not being in that periphery of power. It's talking about, the horseshoe is talking about things away from the periphery of power, of powerless ideologies. The comparison I would make is that, like, I read two different extremist manifestos. I read the neo-Nazi manifesto Siege, and I read the anarcho-primitivist manifesto Uhuru. And both of them basically argue for the same thing. We have to just destroy society. For whatever reason, the Jewish people, so the Jewish people / the technological society, they've taken over. Yeah. We have to just literally go complete like nuclear war. And they argue for it's very similar. And it's not because they have the same idea. It's because they have a similar material environment. One group is from the group ITS from Mexico, and Siege is written by a guy I think he lives in New York City or something. But they have a similar material environment, right? America and Mexico are both in neoliberal societies, obviously different. Mexico's much less developed, right? But they're both trying to fight. They're both extremely marginal ideologies. Overt neo-Nazism, literal praising Hitler, is not a popular ideology in America, and anarcho-primitivism is not a popular ideology in Mexico. So they basically end up having similar material solutions. That's what I think horseshoe theory is focusing on. It's not
it's the first part of destroying the current establishment.
The
far right and the far left are both going to hate Israel, for example.
That's a very good point.
Yeah,
horseshoe
that's
theory
a really good point.
Says nothing about the next step. Horseshoe theory is talking about what do we do about the current society, saying, okay, what is your analysis of what we should do now? And then obviously we disagree. We need to kill 90% of all human beings and rewild society, and we go back to anarcho-primitivism. We need to get rid of all people that are not white people and create, resurrect Hitler through black magic. You have your own stuff, but it's describing what do we do about current society now.
Okay, so I want to say.
I'm sorry. I think Pastel had her hand up.
Pastel's been up for a while. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So if I can go to Pastel and then I'll go to Ethan. How about that?
Yeah. So I just want to bring up how I agree with the horseshoe theory. As Chloe was saying, is like what people's initial like prescriptive thing we should do to topple the current society to get where we want to go. It's a really big thing because I don't think a lot of people, regardless of their ideology, want to like make an unstable or a society and like something that isn't going to work. They believe, at least to some degree, that like their idea is going to work, and they just want to create some society they believe is going to be perfect or better than what we have, which I think is like a really, again, another like maybe point where horseshoe theory might actually hold up, where like a lot of people do have some of the same core axioms where they're like they want to make a society where their people, quote, like their people, whoever that may be, can live like freely and safely, be fine economically and all of that. It's just they go about it prescriptively differently. Also, I think we're missing out on a huge thing of like on social aspects, how horseshoe theory might be similar, because like there are a lot of people, even streamers out there, who will say the same things with completely separate ideologies, which I find very funny.
Hey, Ethan, did you?
Yeah. So I don't like the pairing of socialism and communism so closely, because socialism has been implemented many times without any kind of violence.
It's
called
also
the New
very
Deal.
broad too. Like, so
Right.
what you consider socialism is like if you have like liberal socialism in like Italy or in France, for example, as a kind of socialism, like with markets and
Sure.
such.
Sure,
So,
absolutely. So socialism was implemented through the New Deal into our capitalism and helped control capitalism. That's socialism's purpose. And socialism needs to be paired with a democratic or Republican government, however you want to say it, in order for it to function correctly. Communism is about not only seizing the means of production, but the elimination of private property, which socialism does not require. Socialism does not require the elimination of private property.
Right,
So,
so when discussing communism, if we're talking about Marxism, then you have to talk about transitionary stage Marxist socialism as an accompaniment with it. Not necessarily socialist, because all socialists range, throughout the political spectrum. Like in a world where there's, pretty much two prevailing economic philosophies, right? There's obviously going to be a lot of variance among the two, right? So when pairing communism together, if I'm talking about communism and the socialism I've attached to it, it has to like as a transitionary stage, it has to be either some type of syndicalism or Marxist socialism.
well, and I think the difference is that communism is a philosophy and a political ideology, and socialism is a socioeconomic theory. So they're that fundamental difference is what separates them and why they're on different places on our political axis.
yeah, I would disagree. I think Marxism is itself a way of looking at economics.
Well, we're not talking about Marxism; we're talking about socialism. So that's the thing. We have to uncouple these things because they do have fundamental differences. There's this word I love. I read this whole article the other day on Merriam-Webster's website about contronyms. And it was the first time I'd ever come across it. But a contronym is a word that can mean the opposite of itself. For instance, if I said the window is transparent and your lies are transparent. So in those two sentences, transparent actually means the opposite of itself. And I think a lot of times we talk about communism and socialism in ways that are contronyms, that are contradictory to each other, sometimes when we make similar statements. So we need to remember that socialism, like I said, is a socio-economic theory. Communism is a political ideology and a philosophy.
Well, I think also you have to understand that socialism, again, is not one thing. It's just like communism is not one thing. I would even like to separate the idea of Marxism out from communism per se, because even they were communists before there was Marx, for example. So I think communism and socialism are much more broad sort of ideas than even we're giving them credit for, honestly.
Well, I mean, I think most modern political ideologies spring from the Enlightenment, which is what spawned the French and United States revolutions, and that's why you see some similarities in them. You know, I'm gonna take shit for this, but without Locke saying what he said, and without Adam Smith saying what he said, and people like Paine and people like Jefferson, they were later on, of course, but you wouldn't have gotten to things like Marx. You wouldn't have gotten to things like Jean-Pierre Frey and Murray H. Rothbard with these, more unorthodox ideas in the 20th and 21st centuries.
I'd like to go to Dylan because he looks like he needs to say something. So.
Oh, you read my mind. So, basically, the thing is I felt the importance of talking about Marxist socialism here, because as the prevailing definition of socialism in the context that we're speaking of horseshoe theory right now, I feel like it's important to distinguish them, because if we want to talk about the etymology of the word, how it traces back to Robert Owen and all of these other people, like Charles Fourier and all of them, right? These early utopian socialists, I feel like the whole historical materialism thing, which is a concept of Marxism, and moreover an extrapolation of Marxism, since it's the prevailing one today, is the one that we need to talk about in the context of horseshoe theory as well. Because when we're talking about the far left, we're not talking about, mixed economy, liberal socialism and capitalism. We're talking about tankies, and we're talking about ANCOMs,
Well, Dylan, I actually wonder. I feel
So-
like a lot of people who are into Marxism are a lot more friendly to ideas like post-structuralism than they used to be. So, like for example, like theoretically, Marxism and postmodernism are entirely diametrically opposed to each other, but I feel like that's kind of going away. Do you disagree with that?
Thinking.
I think we're leaning more towards like general, like not conservatism, but what's the other word? Collectivism. I think that the push towards collectivism is generally what's accepted in especially in the United States right now, as people are pushing for those things. But to me, I think that the whole issue of horseshoe theory is that conservatism leads to fascism, and then socialism leads to communism. But I think that those two things, communism and fascism, definitely share a lot of the same tropes, which are required to actually institute those ideologies in general, right? There's a lot of control issues where there's like centralized control both in communism and fascism, and that's where I think that the whole issue of horseshoe theory comes into play, is how much of those things are actually designated by the people or designated by the state, and that's what separates the two.
So big. This is actually I like where you brought this with, because this has kind of been my whole point. I want to wrap it up. Then I'll answer Jazz after this, because I've sat and reflected on the question for the 2 minutes I got.
Sure.
The thing that I wanted to talk about though is sort of the this approach to like socialism necessarily leading to communism and the mechanisms of enforcing it, right? So like this kind of dictatorial concept of whether it's fascism or communism, and they're both authoritative. I feel like this is more, and the method of getting there, I feel like this is more tied in. And I talked about this with Infrared the other day when we debated, because that was a fun time. We talked about vanguardism, right? And I think vanguardism as a concept is moreover the thing that leads to these sort of oppressive regimes, if the ones we're talking about historically are the ones with these hugely negative connotations. So if you wanted to imply that that's the only way we could get to communism, which is just, this has been my overarching issue with the whole line of thought that we've been going through, is I felt like either some of the lines, or maybe I misunderstood some people, but I felt like it presupposes a really authoritarian approach to getting one place or the other. It's
I feel
just,
like is the other end though, that if you are like a more liberal socialist or whatever it might be, or liberal communist, reformist socialist, are you not kind of assuming that people want to do your ideology, or that are on board with you?
so the thing is when I talk about my ideology is based mostly around prescriptions that I'm making about how I think society ought to be. However, one of the main prescriptions of what I'm making is democracy, right? Because generally speaking, this whole people-oriented political philosophy is that democracy is kind of the reigning, overarching, one of the main principles of socialism, and moreover communism as well. So I feel like that as a prescription is, like the democratic aspect of it is more important in the first place. So of course I think people aren't going to want to agree with me. I think I'm a political extremist, like we were talking about earlier, which I have no denial of. However, that being said, when I'm making prescriptions about society, I'm distinguishing them, but I would rather approach it from reformism than not at all. You know what I'm saying? Like I would ditch the communist revolution thing.
I think Pastel had her hand raised.
Yeah, so Pastel first and then Kobe.
Yeah, so Dylan, I have a far less serious question for you. Can you explain why communist and fascist most of the time both have anime profile pictures?
Well, you know what? This is actually a really interesting question, because a lot of them don't do this thing. It's a very scientific process. It's called touching grass. They just never tend to do it, and they should probably start.
So would you accept that as proof for the horseshoe theory, though?
The anime waifu horseshoe.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a horseshoe so much as it's mother's basement is the cheapest rent option, but
true.
This
Okay,
all varies.
Kobe next.
Sure. I mean, 100% honest. I didn't actually have anything to say. I didn't have my hand raised. So I
Oh,
don't really have a ton. I'm sorry, I don't really have a ton to add. I don't really have a ton of opinion about like communist theory. I don't know. Maybe we'll get there one day.
Hey,
okay.
Dylan,
Any thoughts on
turn
any-
your fireplace on in the background there, buddy. Your electric fireplace, okay?
Well, any thoughts on anime profile pictures, Kobe?
I think people should express themselves as they wish. I think it's annoying. I don't like them. But you know what I also don't like is that I don't like there's like the kind of like Tumblr aesthetic, you know what I mean, where it's like a really kind of a pastel drawing of a cartoony. I don't really like that either. Of people like that. I don't know.
Are you saying you're chair gender?
No, listen. I mean, do whatever you want to do on the internet. You know what I mean. If you want to have an anime chair profile, knock yourself out. It's all right. Anime profile pictures are okay by me.
Ethan and then Jazz.
So I think one of the main reasons we can disprove horseshoe theory is by just breaking down what's the difference between conservatism and liberalism. And both of them have this feeling about if there were no laws, right? If we did live in an anarchical system, conservatism says that people would be fundamentally bad to one another and they need laws in order to keep them from harming other people. And liberalism would say, if there were no laws, people would be fundamentally good to each other, and we need to support them to being good, and we need to keep the people that would be bad from hurting other people. So you can't have that and then also say that stuff on either side at extremism is similar in any way. That's my whole point.
So just as a really quick contention idea, I feel like unless you, I don't know if you consider neoliberalism to be left or liberal, a liberal tradition or a conservative tradition. However, the whole idea behind neoliberalism itself is that you need to have these structures in place in order to make the market go correct. And so what would separate me from somebody like Biggs, who's I guess some kind of libertarian, is that right? Where
yeah,
you kind
generally.
of think that enough like negative freedom is going to make things go well, where I think people actually do have to have these structures in order to make freedom work at all. So I wouldn't totally agree with that. But as far as the horseshoe theory goes, I think the one thing in favor of where I kind of a little bit side with horseshoe theory is that I would expect a full-on communist to become a fascist before I would consider a conservative to go fascist. Because you're on both these extreme ends of the spectrum, it's almost like there's a phenomenon called cult hopping, and I think that's much more likely than like a liberal to become a communist.
Okay, Dylan's gonna explode. I can see it.
You just got to be convinced to become racist. If you're a communist and you're just convinced to be a racist, you will become a Nazi. That's how you
like, no. Kobe, come on, Kobe. Kobe, chill out, Kobe. Come on now.
Oh, come on. What race are all the capitalists? It's like,
Okay, guys.
Do you think like Peter Kropotkin's going to become a Nazi? Or do you think that like maybe like Stalin's more prone to becoming a Nazi?
Nobody's becoming a Nazi, okay? The whole Nazi issue is fucking... It's so on the fringe that it's just fucking... not even worth talking about, to be honest.
I know so many people.
I think nobody's becoming a Nazi. I had a 14-year-old Nazi tell me the other day, I need to get back in the kitchen. What's going on?
That's a fucking dumbass fucking teenager that doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. That's not a real Nazi, okay?
The kid's gonna grow up to, if he doesn't
he's not. They're not gonna become a Nazi.
Wait, no. That's how Nazis start. The neo-Nazis, they join, they get the young kids. The kids get ingrained in these social groups. They don't even believe in the stuff the Nazis believe in. And then they stick with that group, and they end up, they just want friends, and then they end up sticking with that group.
That's not the mainstream shit, okay?
Like if you're
but that's how they recruit. That's how Nazis recruit.
I Stardust here. Wait, before we go any further, I feel the need to add that I could generally see someone who's a conservative more prone to becoming a Nazi or a fascist than a communist, depending on where the communist lies, of course.
Okay, so like a DPRK stand is more likely to become a Nazi than
I'm just tired of 14-year-olds telling me to go back to the kitchen.
Well, stop talking to 14-year-olds. Jesus Christ.
What it means to be a woman.
Don't listen to fucking 14-year-olds. That's the problem. You don't need to engage with fucking people that don't have fucking pubic hair, okay? You need to fucking leave them the fuck alone.
If you don't, wait. If you don't provide socialization that's different to these people, then the only socialization they get is from their little neo-Nazi friend group with the one guy who's like leading them.
What are you talking about? School? Are you talking about
No,
like
I'm not talking about
homeschool?
schools.
What are you talking about?
Critical race theory.
Where are they getting this
Okay, I'm
shit?
talking
Communist
about the
agenda.
anatomy. I'm talking about the anatomy of Nazi groups online.
Well,
They
yeah.
specifically prey on young children, and those kids, they are part of those groups not because they believe in those things, but because they have a friend group there.
As do the
What
communists.
are you talking? Are you talking about how old and where are the parents? That's my question.
I mean, I agree with you. But
I mean,
it is what it is. Reality is what reality is.
Wait, yeah, this is why I said the conservative, like, because this is a meme in and of itself. If we're talking horseshoe theory, we got to talk alt-right pipeline. Like, come on.
Oh my god! All right, pipeline, really?
Alt-right pipeline is a very real
From what
thing.
age? It sounds
I
like
got
to
a
me
pipeline
like
for
Stardust
you.
is talking about young
Obviously a
children.
pipeline-
Okay,
okay,
to
let's be real.
me, parents
Should
need to be
pipe down.
involved, right? If parents aren't involved, then that's a problem, right?
Right.
But to me, my kids are young, and I focus them on things like fucking fun, educational.
But that's the point.
children.
You're a good parent.
Well, that's
These
why your
kids who
kids are
get
going to be.
Okay.
yeah, they're not
fair.
going to be. That's the point. You like these kids who will end up in these like alt-right, like white national. Oh my gosh! Thank you for the raid, BX Bullet. These kids
Hell
who
yeah,
end up
BX Bullet.
in these. Thank you so much, guys. Please check out BX Bullet. By the way, okay, these kids who end up in these Nazi groups, they don't have it's not like they have a strong parental figure at home. If they did, maybe they wouldn't be in those groups, but they generally tend to be people who don't have strong parental figures, who don't have a friend group around them, and they find a friend group, and that friend group just happens to have these Nazi beliefs, right? And then and they end up defending the beliefs, not because they believe in them, but because their friends are part of that group.
You guys ever see American History X?
Yes.
Yes, we
Yes.
all saw American History X. Come on now.
It's a good movie.
Perfect
Great.
example. Just spitting it out there. Just
Tom
a great
Hanks, best movie.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Jazz, and then
Oh.
and then Ethan.
So I think what we need to remember here is that whether you're a communist or a socialist or an anarchist or any other sort of fringe ridiculous idea or a Nazi, the thing is that your mom probably didn't hug you enough when you were a kid. I think that's probably true, and which is why you can actually blame parents for that, to be more serious. Like, why do you think there's so many LGBT queer people in communist groups? Because their parents sucked, because their parents hated them, and so they're like, oh, fucking establishment sucks, my parents suck, I'm gonna be a communist because at least they like me. And I think
I want to make a
we need
distinction
to-
here. I want to make a
What?
distinction here in like communist fascist groups, right? Like the ones that are ultra militant fascists, like
Yeah, so
right?
but any kind of extreme anti-establishment group, I think a lot of time comes from being socially isolated, and a lot of it comes from shitty parenting. If you're a
Look,
loving dad, you're not going to have a commie kid. I'm sorry.
Look, as the political extremist of this group, I can indeed agree with that. But instead of winding up an antisocial freak, I wound up a male manipulator who cries in his bedroom late at night.
Hell
Very
yeah.
different.
Hell
So,
yeah. Hell
But
yeah.
to be fair though, all families are communistic dictatorships from the start, right?
True.
So to be fair, right? So when you have these children become young adults, which have this communistic expectation of like things being given to them, but like I don't think that necessarily plays into like the factor of horseshoe theory. But like to me, I think that what I said before was that you have certain ideologies that lead to outcomes, right? And these outcomes are precedent on what the beliefs are, right? So if you have a family that's more liberal and espousing socialistic views, they're going to end up to be more towards communism, right? And if you have people that are more towards conservative views, they're going to lead more towards fascistic views, right? But to me, those views come in actuality end up being the same. You have people wanting to control certain aspects of people's lives, both whether it's through fascism or through communism. So
do you think
to
that
me,
children have lost their work ethic? Like 100 years ago, there weren't a lot of child communists, but now it's kind of going up because we've lost the art of child labor, right?
No, to me,
you make a really good point, Jazz, and that's a really, really good point. And oh my God, you are amazing. But Pastel has been raising her hand, so I want to call on her as well.
Yeah, so I was just thinking, like, whenever you brought up the alt-right pipeline, I cannot tell you how many like trans communities I've been in the past where I have seen people in real time go from communist to Nazi to back to communist. It's actually insane.
It's wild. What
The
the fuck's
boomerang.
going
It is-
on?
The boomerang.
Tanky or like
The Nazbols are the funniest people.
from
like, the Mao
so
Nazis.
I've seen them go from Ancom to Nazi to like Maoist. Like it's actually insane.
What's with the Maoist dude? He
I-
literally didn't bathe. Like, why? Why is that your hero?
So
Sorry.
I agree that like socialization and everything is actually a huge part. And like online right now, we're like getting in these political groups when young is actually like somewhat dangerous. I'm writing a somewhat academic paper that I hope to publish eventually, where I'm like actually evaluating how people will join these like Discord groups or groups online, and how they'll become like an extremist so fast, and like they stay in these echo chambers, and they never leave. And like I believe this is even far more like apparent in like the trans community, because the trans community, a trans person would already agree like society hates me, everyone hates me, the establishment sucks, and here are these extreme ideologies that want to radically change society. I'll just pick one that seems the most favorable to me right now, and I'll stick to that one. And whenever you like prove that that one's not good, they'll just switch to another one. There is no like de-radicalization, or you can't de-radicalize these people, but it's really hard once they already think that the current society is like already so against them that the only way to change things is to completely change society altogether. Which goes back to me saying like horseshoe theory as like a non-academic but like boots on the ground thing probably has like a little bit of merit, where like these people unironically just want to like completely change society, and they don't care how they do it.
Yeah.
As long as it
The problem is people just want control. No matter what side you're on, whether you're on the socialistic side or the fascistic side, you want control of the people. And it's just a matter of getting the people to do what you want to do and bending them to your will. And if you can get them to bend to the will of the people or to the elite, that's the difference in these two ideologies.
Look, Biggs, if you want me to acknowledge that I like dogmatizing people, I've said it on stream before, and I'll say it again. Come
Cringe.
join me.
Well, not only like I think
Yeah.
not even
Okay.
normatively, but also descriptively, Biggs. And I think that people who are on the far left and the far right believe that you can predict the economy in such a way that you can control outcomes. Where I think the more liberal, sort of centrist people don't think that's even
Okay.
possible.
All right. Before okay, I do want to give Ethan and I want to, and then Ethan and then Kobe. But before I give it to Ethan, guys, thank you, people who rated in. Thank you for joining us. Remember to click the follow button, subscribe if you so do choose. And if you
Hell
don't, that's
yeah.
totally okay. But you better fucking click the follow button, or I'll fucking stab you. in a video
Everybody
game,
follow
in Minecraft.
Stardust.
Video game.
Hey, Stardust is the most based streamer out there, okay? If you want any real takes, fucking come in and check out Stardust fucking channel, okay? She has the best takes, the best reactionary videos. She just is the ultimate fucking queen of stream.
Eat your babies if you don't follow me. Sorry.
She's a full-on reactionary.
Hell yeah.
We all know.
I got called a
Sorry.
reactionary by Infrared the other day.
Shut up, Dylan.
Continue, Ethan. Sorry.
First of all, I'm subscribed to Stardust, so if you want to be like your old pal Ethan,
God.
you should too. Anyway, I forgot what I was going to say.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Sorry,
I know what
so
I was
it's
saying.
it's
No,
hard.
I remember
Panels are
now.
tough.
I'm
I will
bullshit.
say.
Let's go.
Okay, so all right, so this whole idea of indoctrinating children, whatever, into Nazism. While I think what happens, for a couple of months, I studied political science in college. I don't know if I brought that up or not, but I did. And I think for probably about a month of my first semester, I was convinced I was a libertarian. And then after that, I was convinced that I was probably a soft conservative but strong centralist. And it was later, once I learned more, once I had more experiences, that I figured out, no, I'm actually a progressive. Like I actually want things to be better for everybody. I don't think that the extreme left and the extreme right want to control people. I think that the extreme left wants to make sure that we have control over people that would use the government to abuse people, or use society to abuse people. And I think the extreme right wants to control people's actions so that they don't violate whatever ideology is being espoused by that country, whether it's religious or political ideology, whatever it is. So I disagree with Biggs on that point.
Okay. Kobe wanted to say something.
Yes. Okay. This is my take on why I think people like young people are just falling down rabbit holes left, right, and center. Right? Ever seen like a video where they like there's like a chimpanzee that they have to like, take out of the wild because it gets hurt, and they put it in like a cage, and they have like on the wall they have like a picture of like the jungle, and the chimpanzee just like sits by the wall and just like pets like the painted leaf. I think that's what a lot of people are doing because we've like there's so many social institutions that used to exist in America just don't exist. People are very atomized. People spend a lot of time by themselves. People combined with social media where they're by themselves but they're judging themselves. I think people want to have like a Boy Scouts, and I think that like being like a little communist can be kind of a Boy Scout. You get a reading list, you get movies to watch, you get podcasts and websites to go to, and people to follow, and all these kinds of little fun things. Same thing for being a fascist or being a tradcath or being whatever it is, or being a Nazi that tells Stardust to go back to the kitchen. That's so crazy, but you know it gives you something to do, and I think that people really want that. And I think that's kind of like a pent-up energy that I think you see in a lot of in Western countries. I don't really know what to do with it. It's just for observation.
I think Stardust is probably amazing in the kitchen and all walks of life. Okay, I think Stardust is fucking amazing. Her stream is awesome every night of the week, guys. I think everybody needs to subscribe and follow her stream because she literally does this every day of the week. She follows all the drama, all the hot takes, and all the crazy ass fucking chaos podcast is fucking awesome. So
right,
everybody here should fucking sub.
How much are you paying him? Tell us.
She doesn't
I
pay me
agree
anything. I'm just a 100% self-indulging person who loves Stardust. Okay, I literally am in love with Stardust. So I'm sorry. I just can't help myself. Okay, I can't help it.
Where's the ring? Where's the ring?
I'm married. I'm married already. But like, if I wasn't, I would totally be all over that.
Can we have a notary? Can we make this official? Is anybody a notary?
For real though, she does an amazing job, guys. So everybody should sub and follow if you aren't already. She's amazing. Okay.
I didn't know you were running an ad break.
I can marry people in Utah, but I think my license expired.
An ad break. I'm just teasing you.
Sorry, Jazz, did you want to?
Yeah, so I have a question. Do you think, just for everyone on the panel, do you think this moves beyond just strictly the political? For example, I would think that somebody on the sort of the far right and the far left, not reaching sort of trusting institutions, might also be into something like homeopathic medicine or something into like supplements or miracle cures. Like how different is the homeopathics on the left versus the Joe Rogan alpha brain people on the right? Like those seem to be as true as well. I also see this in an area, just to give you like a quick anecdote. There's a subreddit that I go on sometimes called NDE, which is near-death experiences. And these people are like 10,000 people who have created their whole little bubble based on science doesn't know what the afterlife is. We do. We have the science. And so I think that this horseshoe stuff goes beyond just politics and into kind of everyday living and things. Does anyone have anything to say about that?
Yeah, so whenever I brought up populism earlier, this is something I wanted to say, but ADD brain stops me. These people do like interact socially very similarly. There is no difference between the pseudoscience on both sides. It's literally just whichever word they decide to call it is what they call it. The like logical steps they take to justify their pseudoscience is 100% the same. You can never convince me otherwise that it's different. So like yeah, I completely agree. And like social aspects and hobbies that they have probably like almost has like 99% overlap. Well, actually that's really hyperbolic. I'd say probably like a good 60 to 70% overlap in like how they justify things and what the actual hobbies are doing, just because of their thought processes are probably very similar. And
mostly
very,
crying and alcoholism, I imagine.
A lot of them. What is up with them like jerking off to guns on both ends? Like I'm totally cool with guns, but like
guns are cool.
Like both sides, but well, guns are cool, but like
so,
man,
their logic right
so
there.
you have the no pretense and no shall not be infringed people, right? You have the shall not be infringed and the under no pretext people, right? So they both want to jerk off to that same thing. So, but to me,
says I need guns.
But to me, honestly, personally, I think that it is with 100% within every individual's right to own a firearm, because that is what the most efficient way to protect yourself is. So to me, that's 100% just should be the basis of human interaction. Like,
Okay, so I disagree with you heavily because I'm training a swarm of wasps right now in my backyard, and I guarantee you're not gonna fuck with any of us.
if
right?
you can literally train a group of wasps to actually like target somebody, I'm 100% behind that.
We're done. Okay.
Okay,
yeah.
if you can actually
Ethan's
do
next,
that,
yeah.
that's 100%. I'm 100% behind you. I think that's 100% legit, and we should focus on that.
You should have met the Canadian geese I kidnapped.
They fucking shit
Okay.
everywhere. Their shit is so
so-
nasty.
They're really fucking they're mean as well. They're really mean.
I got
I've been
invited.
assaulted by a geese multiple times in my life. But I did
got
want to give
invited to
Ethan.
the park.
Right.
Well, you're
so-
much more brave than I am. But yes, Ethan, go ahead.
Yeah, geese are dangerous. So I think it goes back to what I was talking about at the beginning about extremism. What we're really talking about is extremism, whether it's political, whether it's religious, and that's why some of these things look similar. Because when you are an extremist, whether you're a religious extremist, political extremist, whatever it is, you tend to not believe that other political ideologies or other religions are valid, and then you start to get into a place where they're literally dangerous. You have to stop these things from happening. You see it all the time where people are on the right are calling Democrats demons, and they're saying, Joe Biden is dangerous, and the
They
the
drink
universe
blood.
is going to end now that Joe Biden has been elected. And it's like he like falls asleep every 5 seconds. He's not that
Yeah.
scary. But I think that's why you see people are into guns and stuff, and I like guns.
Guns
so
are
I'm-
based. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I'm.
Well,
I'm-
look,
Swords are better
Or-
though.
I'm okay with guns. I just don't get all of the jerking off over it. Like I literally was in an argument with like a socialist the other day who was telling me, like a socialist communist or something, who was telling me that gun control should be a thing, but at the same time has tons of guns like just laying around their
Yeah,
apartment.
like we just need registration. We need insurance, and then we'd be okay.
Well, I think it really comes down to, as far as guns concerned, like we need to prevent people that are going to be irrational and like a mental health issue to be prevented from having guns. But to me, I think that the majority of people are mostly law-abiding citizens. Having guns is perfectly fine. I think protecting yourself, protecting your loved ones is perfectly fine. But when we have issues like mental illness and things like that, that's what we need to focus on. We need
Plus,
to focus on
shooting
that
guns
type
is
of
just
things.
fun. It's
It's fun.
It's enjoyable. Yeah, sure.
But I mean, I think that like having people having some type of practical gun control, as far as like either people that have mental illness or people that have previous affiliation with like being I don't know what the word is, like
An asshole.
like assault or things like that, like they should be prevented from having guns. Things like domestic violence, they should be prevented from having guns. Things like that are perfectly reasonable. But I think what the problem is when people want to take like things like magazine limits and things like that has nothing to do with the actual people that are having the guns. So I think that's the problem.
So, Biggs, I really want to challenge you on this idea. I know this is kind of going off on a tangent about guns, but I want to challenge you here because my worry is that if you say, hey, if you have a certain mental disorder, you can't have a gun, are you not telling people who have mental issues to not go to see a therapist? I think or not having the girlfriend tell the police about the domestic abuse thing. I think when you get into these areas, you are preventing people from seeking out mental treatment, and I think that could be problematic.
I don't think they're the same thing. I think that somebody that has mental illness outside of purchasing a gun probably has other issues that they're dealing with, so they're probably going to already be in the system in general. But what I'm saying is, like, I think that like having people that have felonies for violent crimes are probably should be banned from having guns. I think that people that have like domestic disturbances or domestic violence should be prohibited from having guns. But I think that like overall the general people that are able to have without those issues should be able to have guns. So like I don't really know like what you're like. I think personally like common sense comes into play, and things like having felonies of violent crimes or having personal domestic disputes can be involved in having your ability to have a gun.
How
So-
long would you say we should punish somebody after a felony? To me, it's like if you go to prison for a crime, shouldn't it be the case that hey, you've done your time and that's it? How long do we say if somebody did a felony, for example, like okay, like a violent felony? Do we say you could never own a gun ever in your life? Like, how would you parse that out?
So my personal feeling is once you've basically relinquished your rights of that ability to own a gun, then you either A, have to demonstrate that you're able to have a gun, or B, you don't have a gun. So like it has to be up to the person to be able to fulfill whatever their requirements are and say like you either A, go through courses or anger management or something to that effect.
Like a safe driver's
to be able to
test,
prove
but like with a gun.
what?
Like a safe driver's test thing, but like with a gun, for example.
Maybe.
Or a series of classes.
But like okay, so like I think if you do a robbery with a gun, you should probably not be allowed to own a
Yeah.
gun legally, right?
So guys, sorry, go ahead. Kobe, and then Ethan, and then Dylan.
Yeah, sorry to take it off topic. Sorry.
I gotta bounce.
Oh, you got to bounce, Dylan? Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
thank you for stopping by. Do you have a Twitch I can shout you out at?
I don't actually use a Twitch
Start
yet.
streaming,
Use
Dylan, you
YouTube?
fuck.
What do you do?
Me? I make YouTube.
What's
You
your
have a
YouTube?
Link me your YouTube, and I will link it in the chat.
Dylan
because
makes amazing music. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Music, and he also is on a lot of politically provoked. He
He's a
does
good debater.
amazing.
He's incredibly charismatic guy.
Yes.
Incredibly charismatic, incredibly well read. Very very smart.
Very charismatic tonight. I gotta say, if you can.
He's a socialist cuck, but I still love him.
Hey, thank you for stopping by. Thank
It
you for
was
stopping
great,
in after
great
you
meeting
got
you.
finished
It
with
was awesome.
with work.
Yeah, Dylan, if you
I
ever
love
want
you,
to come on
Dylan.
my YouTube channel, man, you just let me know. I'd love to talk with you sometime.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me
I
too.
just gotta bounce because I gotta do some stuff and then I gotta get ready for the next panel.
Hey,
Alright.
I'll be on later,
I'm
Dylan.
sorry.
Okay, don't forget about me, buddy.
Bye bye, Dylan.
Take care, y'all.
Later, man.
Bye.
Bye. Dylan's amazing, everybody.
Yeah,
Hey,
I was just
check
gonna
out check out his stuff on Politically Provoked. He just he debated the infrared the other day.
Well, he
and
was
did
infrared.
amazing.
Can you give me a look down on who infrared is?
He's like a tanky guy.
He's a tanky guy.
Mega tanky.
They they debated like socialist and communist theory, Marxist theory, and stuff like that. It was very good. It was just the other day. I think it was like Thursday or Friday night. He does a great job. Dylan's amazing. So everybody check him out on there. And
He's the new infrared, basically.
yeah,
Can I ask an off-topic question real quick?
Hell yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
How is Politically Provoked still up? Hasn't that Discord been taken down like 4 times?
I don't know.
they do
But
it. They do it
I-
based on not the person who does the panels and stuff like that, but they do the panels separate from the person. So like because the person is not involved directly, they are able to do it. So it's some bullshit like that they finagle their way. So
So
Well,
I'm wondering.
I just want to say, okay, that I am not somebody who believes in deplatforming by any means. I am somebody who goes
Based.
on Politically Provoked frequently whenever they invite me on, and I'm somebody who, as soon as somebody brings up deplatforming, I'm just completely against it, because the moment that you're okay with deplatforming, you're okay with somebody deplatforming you, and I don't want that to be the case in any way. I would rather because they already have a platform. It's not like I'm giving them a platform. They already have a platform. They're platforming me. So, it's either they have pushback or they don't have pushback. Sorry.
Yeah, I only
Anyways.
brought it up because I saw a tweet earlier that their Discord was taken down a while ago, and I'm like, I thought
Yeah.
you couldn't just keep recreating Discords, but apparently you can.
Well, somebody's being really weird with it. I don't know. It's so strange. Sorry. Ethan, I think, wanted to speak, right?
Yeah, I did. I would say I agree with you on platforming real quick, except for in one exception, if you're harassing people, if you're using your platform to harass people, that's you can't do that. But besides that, yeah, I don't believe in deplatforming people. So real quick, I know we got into a gun conversation, which isn't totally applicable, but I think that I have a friend who's a neuroscientist. I want to bring him on soon and talk to him about this. But I think there are some mental conditions that are dangerous. For instance, my aunt is bipolar. She has been violent to me in the past, unfortunately, because she's mentally ill, not because she doesn't love me. She loves me a lot. My uncle is schizophrenic. He once tried to throw his boss out of a 10-story window because he freaked out. He doesn't work
Dude,
anymore.
you
He's
live the
disabled now.
same life as me. I have so many family members, like close family members, who have these issues, who have been violent. Like,
Right. And so I would not want my aunt or my uncle to ever own a gun, and they shouldn't.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it
they
pains
shouldn't.
me
Yeah.
to say that because I believe very much in the right to bear arms, but I think there are some exceptions, and they're rare, but there are some exceptions. There are some people that should not own guns.
So do you? I
Yeah,
kind of
there's
agree
definitely-
with you. I agree with you theoretically, but do you not think that if somebody's like, "Hey, I really want to own a gun, but I know I'm kind of wacky in the brain, maybe I shouldn't go to a therapist"? Do you
Okay,
think, or
but-
maybe I shouldn't go to a psychiatrist? Is
But
that
here's
possible?
the thing. But you could apply that to literally any law. Okay.
Well, hold
so
on.
the problem is you have to have laws and you have to enforce them as well as you can. If you sit here and you say, well, somebody could circumvent it this way or circumvent it this way or circumvent it this way, you're going to end up in an anarchy system
I actually
sitting
have
in
like
your
a-
house all day.
I have a really good example. So I'm not sure if you know about this, but in California, I think in 2019 we changed the laws around HIV reporting, where it used to be illegal that if you knew you had HIV and you had sex with somebody and you transmitted it, that you could be held legally liable. But what they found is that exactly what you're saying here is it encouraged people who were more likely, the people that are most likely to get AIDS were people that are most likely to be engaging in unsafe sex for whatever reason, most likely to then not seek out the test, right? They can just know they have AIDS and do that. So by making it not criminalizing it, we saw that we have an increase of people getting tested for AIDS and a decrease in the transmission of AIDS. So I would agree. That basically made my answer.
Well, then you have to.
Just to cap it off, if we could see that there was a benefit to this or that mental condition or whatever we put it into, some sort of behavior law, whatever, if we saw a benefit, we saw less gun crime, perhaps I could be beneficial for it. But I do think that there is demonstrating what you're saying here, that it can discourage people from getting the help they need, and then there's a whole lot of other problems there.
I think you also have to ask yourself:
Pass
do you
that.
want somebody who's do you want somebody who's either A, has a gun and is very well medicated in therapy with, like, for say schizoaffective or bipolar disorder, or do you want somebody who might not be able to get a gun legally but has no medication and is not treated at all? Like, to me, the second person is way more dangerous than the first person. So I guess that's where I'm coming from as well.
Yeah, just to give like a serious take on gun control and stuff. I'm like probably the most rehabilitationist person you'll ever see for like crime, and I don't know if I agree with the fact that like domestic abusers, after they've served their time and everything, can't own a gun afterwards. I understand like empirically why that could be a thing, but from a purely like philosophical axiomatic thing, that makes me feel really uncomfortable that like you commit one crime and your gun privileges are just over. Like you just lose the right to have the most efficient way to defend yourself, if you ever need to.
Yeah, and I meant to add that onto my statement real quick because I'm going to forget if I don't say this. But I'm totally the same. Like once you've served your time for a crime, you should get all your constitutional rights back, voting.
Yeah,
everything.
100%. Oh yeah, the fact
What's
that
up,
some
Jay
people can't
Freak?
vote after committing crimes is actually insane to me. I cannot believe that's a thing in my country.
So the
Yeah.
argument that I guess I would make, I'm pretty big gun control guy. I kind of don't think owning a gun should be a right. I kind of view I kind of view the gun as like a tool in society. You know what I mean? Like I think that it's fine if you lose the privilege to have certain tools. I think that if, for example, if I worked as a flight person, like a pilot, and I got like drunk a bunch and I had a bunch of infractions, I think it's reasonable for us to say, listen, I'm sorry, you've demonstrated that you do not have the responsible level to be a pilot. You could be other things, but not a pilot. I think I would make that kind of determination. But I also would understand that there's. I also am sympathetic to the idea that like if you did a thing when if you're 45 and you did a thing when you were 20 and you're still having your liberties, I'm sympathetic to doing something
Restricted,
there.
yeah.
So there are certain things that you do have to say that you give up the rights once you do certain things. So like to me, like obviously I do kind of agree, like if you do something when you're 20 versus when you're 40, like that is something. So like statute of like limitations type situation, but like I think there are some issues where you do give up your rights when you commit certain crimes and things like that. So I do think that there is some aspect where that comes into play, whether or not that like should be perpetrated against you in perpetuity for the rest of your life, maybe not, but like I think there are certain things where like if you commit a certain crime, like you should be held responsible for a certain amount of time. But like I don't know if it's necessarily like for the rest of your life, but I think that there should be some type of whether it's through like legal means like reciprocity or whatever, but you should be able to like set a petition for like your REITs to be reinstituted, like in
Yeah, I
that
mean,
respect.
the
If I
best way to
can,
end
if I can,
recidivism is to help people rehabilitate. No, I
Yeah.
agree.
yeah. So if I can jump in real quick, I may disagree with the domestic violence take because generally I don't know what the statistics are on how often people who commit domestic violence repeat. But owning a gun, if somebody is a domestic abuser, owning a gun, they will at some point pull it on their spouse, right? If they're put in therapy for domestic violence, I don't know all the statistics behind that. If there's like proof that that therapy is useful and can change somebody and stop them from committing again, then
There's
yeah,
always going to be some risk, obviously.
yeah.
Okay, so I have a question about horseshoe theory, actually.
Mhm.
I wonder if, as a group, we are all kind of political nerds in some way or another, and horseshoe theory is something that's kind of for people who are on the ground, who are kind of just like your neighbor Joe or whatever. And I wonder if we're kind of like it's very hard for us to see how other people might see horseshoe theory because we're so bogged down in theory ourselves. I wonder if we can even get out of that.
Yeah, I work at an economy class hotel, and I like to talk to people about politics as much when I can. Talk to a lot of like construction workers, people that do that kind of stuff, and yeah, 100%. There's a very pervasive thought that the Democrats and Republicans are just the same thing, just very simple kind of like power reductionism. That I think a lot of working class people have. That it's like people in power just kind of will do whatever they want to do, and they call different countries have different names for the powerful. They call them communists in China, they call them capitalists in America. But I see that that's a very pervasive sentiment, I think, from the disconnected people I talk to.
Sorry, Ethan looks like he was going to say something.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. My four-legged producer is here, and he's helping to manage the stream. So my name on Mixer was Progressive Liberal for a long time, and YouTube. And I did that because I would stream on Mixer, and people would come in and start talking to me about politics and their political theories. One of the people's that's my mod now. That's how we met. They came in one night because I said something they didn't like while I was playing Paladins or something, and now we're friends. So I agree with you on the surface that yeah, political people who are trying to be politically engaged but aren't political academics see horseshoe theory as a easy way to explain things. But I think Benjamin Franklin told a story about when he left the Continental Congress, and he's walking out, and this woman says to him, "Well, what do we have, doctor? Do we have a monarchy or a republic?" And he says, "A republic if you can keep it." And I'm sure that absolutely happened, just like every other story that Benjamin Franklin told. But the reason that he tells the story is that it's a message to us even today, that the only way we keep our republic is to be engaged with it. So when we're educating people, I think it's fundamentally important to make sure that we're engaging with them in good faith, and that we're doing our best to help them understand whatever the question is that they're asking, without political nerd-splaining to them.
True.
Hell yeah, nerd splaining is based.
I want to give
actually.
So Kobe has to leave, and it is 10 o'clock. I wanted to give Kobe the outro here. So
Yes, thank you so much. We got started a little bit late, so I wish I could stay a little bit over, but I got some other stuff I got to do. So it's been great talking. It's always fun. I'll link my Twitter if you want to talk. I don't really do like stream or whatever. I'm a mod in a couple channels, so it was really fun talking. Thank you so much for having me on, Sardos, and thank you everybody else.
thank you for joining us. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you, Kobe. You're amazing.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
So it's 10 o'clock. So generally this is the point where, like, if people want to jump on, and if there's somebody in the audience who really wants to give their take on something, feel free to jump on. If people need to jump out, feel no obligation to me to stay if that's what you need. Yeah,
All I'd be doing is watching your channel anyway, so I'm just gonna stay there.
nice.
I'll stick around to
Alright.
see if there's any fun hot takes.
I am gonna go pee.
Yeah.
Though. I'll be right back.
Okay, have fun.
Thank
That's
you
weird.
so
Why
much.
would I say that? Why would I say
What?
that?
Have a great time.
Have a great time pissing, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna,
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna skip the whole way. I guess. I don't know.
Oh, come on. Have you never like have you guys ever like held your piss for like so long that like peeing kind of feels like almost an orgasm? Like it's like that close. It's
I've
It
never
feels so
had that
good.
before. That
Yeah.
must be a dude thing.
I think
don't
it
know.
Maybe,
is.
yeah,
I just hold it
probably.
in. Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely know what you're saying. You ever had to pee so bad you get a boner? Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
If you ever was like, if you ever like fucking somebody kind of unattractive.
Sorry,
like, make sure you have
sorry to
pee.
make it awkward, Stardust. Sorry.
Now, this is like real talk.
No,
right now.
it's
Okay.
fine.
If
It's
you ever
fine.
want to fuck somebody who's like really
Continue.
not, if you want to fuck an ugly person, like make sure you have to pee first because like it'll totally keep it going. You know.
So I have a question real quick. Have you guys heard of like people being rated on Twitch recently, like LGBTQ people? Because I'm pretty sure that just happened to me.
Rated.
Oh,
You got
you
rated?
got hate rated? Did you get hate
Yeah.
rated?
Hate
I'm
rated.
getting like tons of
Oh,
bot
no.
spams and shit right now.
Yeah, I've gotten that a couple of times.
I'm sorry.
That's well,
Let me
I mean, I don't
Let me
really
see.
care. But it's got, well, I went off stream because they told me to check my phone and they were trying to hack my Twitter. Even though
I
I
was
didn't-
the
really.
hell?
Yeah,
That's
I
a-
got like 32 different like Twitter password resets. It's actually crazy.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
So like I noticed something. I was on Twitter the other day and somebody quote tweeted me and just put they them. And I'm like, okay, I know you're insulting me, but you can put some creativity to it. You can like give a quip or a joke or like an insult. Like, what the fuck am I gonna do with that? Like, it's like somebody's like, you're a lesbian. It's like,
Okay.
like what else do I do?
Right,
I don't
yeah.
know.
But thank you so much, Stardust, for having us on here. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
it's always
it.
fun.
It's
Yeah.
been amazing.
I always have fun.
Everybody who's watching, be sure to sub and follow Stardust. She's amazing. She has great content every night of the week.
Every single night.
She brings it.
I had
She
so much
fucking
fun,
looks
PM.
beautiful.
The work
And
ethic
she
is amazing.
she does the work, okay? She does the work
Wow.
that people aren't willing to do. Okay? She's fucking amazing and
It's a
everybody
dirty
should follow
job. Someone's got to
and
do it.
sub. So thank you all, and thank you, Stardust, for being an amazing host.
Thank you.
I'm gonna be honest.
you
I
for
thought
ha-
about you guys the entire time I was peeing. I did.
Oh my
Really?
God, thank you so much.
That's awesome.
So what you're saying is you were holding your dick while you were thinking
With
about
both
us, huh?
hands, yeah. Because
Oh, yeah.
I don't want
You
to
gotta-
fall in the
Yeah,
water.
oh, yeah.
Sure.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you so much, Stardust, for having
Later,
me
babes.
on. I appreciate it.
oh
you
yeah,
guys are all
thanks for
amazing.
coming.
You too, buddy.
Yeah.
Stay out of trouble and have a great evening. Peace.
Sweet.